Yeah. Want me to open?
Yeah, please.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We didn't know if we'd have anybody or not this close to Christmas, but I guess when you send out, draft management plans, you get some attention, so.
I think you did that on purpose.
I know. So we're gonna go over those today a little bit, and we'll give you some updates. We'll try to keep the updates pretty swift and get into the management plan, 'cause I'm sure we're gonna have some discussion on that. But thank you for attending, and we'll get moving.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I think everybody on the call knows me, but I'm Amer Hussein. I'm with Geosyntec Consultants, and we are the engineering consultants for South Fork. I'm looking. It's been a long week. It's been a. For the Tulare Lake subbase for Tri-County. For Tri-County. It's just been a long week. All right, for Tri-County. Let me give you a quick update on the Tri-County Tulare Lake Subbasin GSP. So we have revised the document. It is a standalone document now. There are two parts that are there are appendices, and they're obviously very key parts of the document that just need to be placed in it. One, of course, is the allocation program, and the other one are these management programs, one of which we are going to be talking about today. Obviously, there's going to be management plans for subsidence, water levels, and water quality. And we'll get into some of the details on the management plan here in just a bit. The rest of Tulare Lake is also moving forward. I will tell you that after this meeting, Johnny and I are actually going to the Mid-Kings meeting afterwards, and it looks like they're going to have some decisions made as well, and I think they'll be finally moving forward on their plan. So that'll be a good thing to get Tulare Lake finalized. Right now, the schedule is to get everything submitted by the end of January, and that's what we're working towards. On the Tule subbasin, there's ongoing discussions. We do need to update the plan a little bit, but the biggest issue on the Tule subbasin is the subsidence study that's going to occur at the border between Tri-County and DEID and Fixley and DEID, and I have some slides later that I'm going to jump into. So I'm going to just give you some more details on the subsidence study in a bit too, and I've got some slides for that. Susan, do you want to talk about the Tule Trust?
For those of you that may have known that we had submitted an application with USDA for land fallowing program, we found out that we did not get those funds, unfortunately. So we'll try again. We'll go back to the drawing board. We're waiting on some feedback from them to find out how we can strengthen our application. The only feedback I got at this point is that they were highly oversubscribed, so they had a lot of applications. We have a watershed coalition group that has been established. I actually will be setting up a meeting schedule for that this afternoon, so that'll come out so everyone can get that on the calendar for the coming year. Anybody interested in being a part of watershed planning, project planning, prioritization is welcome to be a part of that. I will also be starting some informational meetings and workshops around SALC, Sustainable Ag Land Conservation Program in the new year. I will be establishing that calendar today also. We operate two different SALC grants, one for Tulare County, which operates in eastern Tule, and then the trust itself has its own SALC grant, which kind of operates through the rest of the subbasin. So in the new year, I'll be attending meetings, providing a little summary about what SALC is, what the intent behind that is, and then having some workshops to kind of delve into the details a little bit more, and find a stakeholder group that would like to provide input on how that's developed. We hope to apply for Tier 2 capacity funds in July under the SALC grant, and that will help us set up to that. There is a webinar tomorrow being put on for water management for dairies. Anyone interested is welcome to attend. If you do not have that invitation, I can forward that to you if you're interested. And I have land fallowing. Everyone's got their crops in the ground for the year, so I'll start doing monitoring in January. And I think that I hit all of it. Is there any questions?
When do we apply again for it's an NRCS grant, right?
Yeah, I believe that it would be due again in July. It comes out like in March or April, like it did last year. My understanding is that I believe there's another group going out for it, but I'm not exactly sure what they're going for. I don't believe it's land fallowing. I think it's conservation. But one of the things I've learned is that I need to develop a relationship with the local folks. When I went for it before, they set me up with like a consultant, and I was communicating with all these different people, but nobody said, oh, but you should make contact with this. And so I'll be doing that as well.
I was gonna suggest too, maybe, when that meeting occurs, Eric Lemus and I go, because we can really articulate the need for land fallowing.
Okay.
And, I think starting those relationships is really key, and starting that discussion. I mean, whenever I'm in discussion with anybody at state or federal level, you know, there's Congressman Valadao or whoever it is, I'm talking about money for fallowing, because that's where we are, and so.
Well, I was gonna ask either Deanna or
Critical.
Susan, the stuff that Eric Lemus and Dan Beek, when they went back to DC like about a
Yeah,
month
they have
ago.
that video, it's very good.
Right, what funds were they, I guess what I'm getting
They're
at.
going after the same funds,
Yeah.
Right.
but I don't know exactly what they're going after.
Is there
I think it's
anything we could do
conservation.
basin-wide? Because we gotta get,
That's what I
we
was
gotta
wondering.
get some parachutes for our landowners in the white area to avoid potential, you know, it's like you get close to a taking on the society side, it almost becomes like a taking type situation for some people in their mind, and so they might be prepared to litigate before they lose everything. So we gotta think about how we could, your point, we gotta give funds, solid, not just like $100, but some serious money to
Right.
give people an exit ramp
Right.
before
And that
they
would be-
potentially are told you can pump like enough to get some sheep on your ground, right? I don't
Right.
know. I mean,
Yeah, and that was the intent of the
that's a
application
huge
that was
policy
put
issue
in.
for the Tulare subbasin.
It is.
And with, you know, there's an extreme difference between the haves and the have-nots
Mhm.
in our basin right now. I know Pixley is kind of in between thing, but Tri-County is extremely have-not area.
Right.
And when you
Deanna's
see,
been very involved.
People
I
pumping.
keep her in the forefront all the
when you
time.
see people pumping across the road from you,
Yeah.
flourishly making all kinds of money, hand over fist, and you're over here on this side thinking, I made the wrong choice 10, 15 years ago, you know? Human nature comes out and says, you know, what's the other thing we can do? So, I mean, I know this is all a lot of signal, all this stuff we're talking about, but we gotta think about how do we avoid, and it's gonna take some work. So if you need help from landowners or if we need to, whatever we need to do to lobby, I mean, it needs to happen. I mean, we're spending so much time on stuff, but this is all gonna kill us. Everything we're talking about today is gonna wipe out Tri-County. Let's cut it to the core. What we're talking about today is gonna wipe out growers, especially on the eastern side of Tri-County. Is there any, am I being too?
No, you are not, you are
So,
not.
I mean, we're gonna spend a lot of time talking about how we're gonna put ourselves out of business today, right?
Yeah.
That's all we're doing, we're gonna talk about and how much time we have to keep it going out of business.
Yeah.
Which I'm gonna definitely advocate for as long as possible. We wanna stay in business as long as possible, but the inevitable is gonna come. And, gosh, Deanna, I don't know what we can do for us as landowners to help. What can we do? I mean, can we help pay to go to, send you to DC, or do we need to have people going to, I don't know, we gotta do, like, really raise,
What we
like,
need,
this is like,
teams of people that can articulate it well, that are really spending a lot of time talking to. I mean, we have a whole new set of legislators in Sacramento, a whole new set. We're starting all over again. So all of those land have no background usually in water at all. This is a lot.
I mean, is there room to join, I mean, Eric, obviously, and Dan, they're working on behalf of those two districts, right? So.
Can
mean,
I
there's-
interject? This is
Yeah,
Kathy.
go ahead, I'm
Can I
just saying,
interject?
is there any way to partner?
Yes, yes. The trust has been approached, just our president. We aren't sure of the conversation, but I think we need to be at the table with the trust, with Pixley, Tri-County, as they're going forward with this other conservation grant. And you know, we really need to go after federal dollars. And
Yeah.
Farm Bill, definitely,
Yeah.
you know, I've got connections with the NRCS in Davis. We need to meet with them. They're the ones that funded the Lower Deer Creek plan that Pixley got $650,000 for. We just need to, as Deanna says, we just need to understand what our message is and what our ask is, and utilize, you know, the trust as also a partner. But I know that Dan and Eric have approached the trust. I'm not sure, we have a meeting on Friday, what they're looking for. So yeah, Deanna, when I'm back, I'm out of the state right now, we can talk about a strategy and working with Susan on what we could do to go forward. I know also Amir Geosyntec was asking for some information on the Salk grant. I think Max was interested in going forward on a grant, but the trust is going to be looking at another capacity grant, so we need to work together on that as well.
That's great, Kathy. I think whatever we can do to coordinate is to get more acres to bigger asks in front of federal or state people. It's very imperative that we do that as soon as possible, because these things take time.
And they're also, you know,
You've got this, right now.
you've got this big chunk of BLM land right in the center of Tri-County. And there is some funding there for some different projects. I think Audubon, they're going forward for some money for an EPA change grant. I'm not sure of all the details. I haven't read it, but there are some opportunities. We just need to, as you say, we need to go forward and contact people and have our strong messaging.
Yeah, because I know you and Dan have been at this for a while, right? And figuring out how to turn ground into conservation. I mean, a lot of this ground, let's be honest, is probably going to fall into some conservation type use down the road. So, but you have farmers, landowners who invested a lot of money, pre-stigma, their farming ground has been improved, you know, so that we're in a, I don't know, I don't like to beat around the bush. I like to get right to the heart of the issue. We're dealing with people losing their investment completely. People don't like to do that. They don't willingly walk away from your investment. It's like walking away from your house.
Yeah, and doing our best to help landowners stay whole is really a big challenge. So
yeah, I don't think we're gonna be able to stay whole. I just think if we can get something to make ourselves a little better.
Yeah.
I really want to
Whole
echo
is
that.
the question. I don't think we can get whole.
That'd be nice.
That would be
I mean,
nice.
would it make sense to expand the scope of this? I mean, because the subsidence issue is gonna be the kind of the controlling issue, right, of what's gonna stop pumping in the near future or kind of medium future. So, I mean, if we expanded the scope to the entire area that's impacted by subsidence, the, you know, portions of Kauai, pretty much the entire Tulare Lake, and if we're gonna go out there and do some lobbying, maybe we need to get everyone that's impacted to invest in that lobbying. For
Is Aaron Fukuda, if they don't, I mean, what if they haven't been able to track what Twitter ID is gonna do?
Well, I think Aaron's being-
subsidence in the southern part of Kauai.
Aaron has been very careful to try not to overcommit on what they're going to do with subsidence, because he can read the writing on the wall. He knows what it's going to do.
Yeah.
So in the GSP, they've committed to their 25%, 50%. I mean, they've got those step downs, but they pulled the quote map idea out because
That might be
they
too
didn't
big
go
of
that
an ask today, but I think we should
definitely focus on Tulare, the Tule, and maybe El Rico, I don't know, El Rico. Maybe some El Rico on the line, probably not, but,
Don't.
because El Rico is the biggest, aside from it in Tulare Lake, they're the most impacted portion.
Yeah, as an area where you don't want undesirable results, Corcoran's definitely, the Corcoran levee is the undesirable result that we need to avoid, right?
That's what the state points to, but the epicenter of subsidence is Corcoran.
Right, but when you look at the maps, it's actually not Corcoran. When you look at the maps, it goes, from kind of halfway between here and the Highway 99 and straight through Hanford and right into Lemoore.
Well, I think we better stay focused on what we can control.
Right.
Our board,
Yeah.
but I definitely would, that's why I want to bring it up. Appreciate, Kathy and Susan, what you guys have done, and Deanna too, but I think we need to, I'm just speaking on behalf of Atlanta, we just need to do all we can to generate some off-ramps, some ways to generate some funding that will give, landowners some options to, help them retire. Nothing I'm seeing on the agenda today gives me any more fuzzy that the future looks bright. Definitely bright. For the,
And that
eastern
was
half
the
of,
intent
the eastern
behind
half of Tri County does not look
Salary
good.
program, was that it would give us funding for 5 years and allow, opportunities for landowners to transition and find, where they wanna go or what they wanna do.
Yeah.
So that was the intent behind the program, and we'll keep pushing.
Okay. I'll shut up.
Hey, Max, after all of that, I wanted to get back to MLRP and ask you about, the local plan as well, not to put you on the spot.
Hey, Amir. No, I heard Susan's reference there and figured you were going to be calling my name. Yeah, the local plan is coming together. I'm working to have a draft of it ready for Deanna's review at the end of this week. Again, the local plan is intended to, support the core plan, which is the overall basin planning document. But the core plan or the local plan is focused on Tri-County and some specific strategies and options, and providing some resources for landowners and potential project proponents within Tri-County. So that is coming, and hopefully that will, it's not going to solve the problem, but at least hopefully it will provide a bit of a roadmap and some, set the foundation for some trade-offs and some alternatives when folks are thinking about following and retiring.
Yeah, I think more and more that's probably going to be an important part of what we're going to be talking about moving forward, as well as you kind of heard it from based on this discussion here the last few minutes. So yes, thank you, Max.
Max, did, you receive a link to do a survey for MLRP? I'm wondering if I received that link and you didn't receive it, because you've been more involved than I have, so I'm gonna forward that survey link to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure I did.
Okay, I'll forward it to you.
Great, thank you.
All right, let's jump into the subsidence management plan in our presentation for today. Stacey, was this made available to the people on the line?
It was sent out with the agenda.
Oh, with the agenda, okay. So I think everyone probably got a copy of the draft Tri-County Subsidence Management Plan. This is very much a working draft. It is very much a working draft. We got this pulled together, obviously, based on a number of conversations. We used, so for a variety of reasons. One is the Tule subbasin, Pixley already had their plan in place. So as much as possible, we want to try and use as much as we can from the Pixley, so we don't have a bunch of different plans sitting across the Tule subbasin. But we also looked at things that are specific to our area as well. And so there are some changes in the plan, and there are some differences in the plan between what Pixley has proposed and what Tri-County has proposed. So let me jump into this presentation. I'm gonna go through a short few slides on the management plan. I'm gonna give you an update on the subsidence study, an update on the Water Smart grant and the Allensworth project as well. So just a quick reminder for everybody, it's been a month. So just a quick reminder. Where do the allocations and how do the management plans, how do they interact? Several of you have seen this slide several times already. Some of you have already seen it this week several times. So just a reminder, you know, when we're talking about the management plans, it's all about impacts. And if impacts are occurring, then we implement the management plans. And if there's no impacts, then we continue our groundwater allocation policies, people continue pumping, they continue to implement those policies as is. Only the areas that have issues and impacts are we gonna implement the subsidence management plan or even the water levels or water quality, and it would only impact those areas. Now, it may be a larger area, it may be a smaller area, depending on where those impacts are occurring. So that's the relationship between the allocations and the management plans. So several of you have seen, again, this is some reminder slides just to set the stage again for everybody. The state has made it very clear that they are very much looking for actions that happen when certain triggers occur. So you hit a certain level, you're taking a clear action, and that's, I think, Pixley did a good job of spelling that out in their plan, and we've kind of followed that. But that is very much what the state has indicated they're looking for. The quilt pattern that you see off to the side there is the same one that is currently proposed in the draft GSPs. I will say that, you know, we're going to talk about the subsidence study here in a bit, and that may change those values. But I don't want to get your hopes up, and I've said this numerous times, that it is not likely to change significantly. They may change, but not significantly. Okay. And again, just a reminder, for those of you coming from the Tulare Lake side, the baseline for Tule is 2020. So all of those numbers that you see for the MT, the total minimum threshold for cumulative subsidence is based off the 2020, which means in some areas we've already lost, 2 feet. Yes.
Let me know if you want to spend time on this.
Yeah.
On another slide,
Yeah.
But the minimum thresholds on the DEID, those account for the concerns or requests made by DEID. Is that right? Minimum threshold levels?
I would say not exactly, because
Yeah.
DEAD would like that to be 0.
Sure, right,
Yeah.
but it's not the actual minimum threshold. There's already
We're
a
gonna,
reduced amount in there.
the study that they're gonna,
Besides the
Forget
study,
that.
no, I know,
Okay.
yeah.
so,
These values are the minimum threshold, so from 2020. So that means anything that's occurred since 2020 is going to come right off of these numbers.
Wait,
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not the question.
It's not, yeah, so because I'm pretty sure we talked about it in another meeting, but the
Yeah.
minimum threshold that you have listed here
Yeah.
was actually less than what the actual minimum threshold, maybe it's from Harder's study. Harder's study had a minimum threshold level that was higher than what is actually being used on the DEID boundary. I just wanted to confirm if are those the numbers?
I
These
don't
are
know.
the numbers,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
These are the numbers that are in the current, I would say, coordination agreement,
Well,
that we have said of the southeast area that we need to
Yeah.
So in a-
revisit that,
Yeah.
but there's no movement on that
Yeah.
yet.
Well, because I know in a previous conversation too, the reason those minimum threshold numbers were as such was so we could coordinate. And
Yeah.
if we tried to bump it back to what was the actual minimum threshold, that was unlikely to happen.
So when you say actual, I think you're talking about, there's a slide, not a slide, but a figure in Harder's report that's got a variety, they're not on a grid pattern, it's each contour line.
Yeah, right.
And they kind of contours back down to roughly about a foot or subsidence or so.
Yeah, 'cause I think that region's supposed to be like 3 to 4 foot, but they're all at 2, or less,
Yeah.
2.5.
So what Tom did when he did this is he kind of, balanced out each grid, because that, contour lines that he kind of drew on that figure, they're not manageable in real life, right? You can't have these lines cutting through people's halfway through your field or something like that. So that's why we went to the grid, and I think Tom averaged numbers off across the grids.
Right, but if we've looked at subsidence maps and, I mean, 'cause you go just to the west of those zones that are on the DEID boundary, their minimum thresholds are significantly higher, in my opinion. They're at 3.8, 4.3, you know, so.
Yes.
The reason
So
was
they can,
decided-
they can subside more.
The reason was because of the pipeline system in Glen Early Martin and their assertion that it was gonna damage their pipeline.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah.
why it's so small along the boundary.
Well, okay, so that answers my initial question, was, 'cause those minimum threshold levels that are on those, you know, far east zones are less than what the actual minimum
Yes.
threshold number. Okay.
Yes, they're less in the study, but this number is what we're going with.
Well, I think.
Until the study is done.
Right, well, but I think that's kind of where I wanted to go was, I mean, as we work through this, I think as a landowner, my request would be, we're giving up so much already.
Yes, but-
If we follow these guidelines, we're already gonna be at, 50%, 75%.
Right.
I would prefer to see a higher minimum threshold, at least go with the actual, or post-study, see what that comes out at.
Yeah, but that actual number you keep referring to, Brennan, was done before DEID said, hey, our pipelines are damaged at these values.
Yeah,
So,
but that's where, again, just as a landowner in the area, my input here at this point is just, we follow their demands, we follow this new proposed policy, we're cutting the feet out from underneath us, is what I'm trying to say. So,
That's why there will be a study.
right,
I cannot, I don't know what's gonna happen with that study. It could be,
Totally.
it could come out the opposite
Yeah.
of what we think might happen. And that's where, we're reluctant to say it's gonna be better. Cause, the study, I think we've got some concessions. I think the study is going to, we're gonna use, actual data. So it's gonna, come up with a value, and we're also gonna look at how much, Glen Early Martin is contributing to their own subsidence issues, and that's
Right.
all in the scope of the study now, which I'm very glad to see. But I don't have any way of knowing what that's actually going to.
well, and I understand that study's coming, and
Yeah.
who knows what the outcome will be.
Right.
So yeah, I would say we're not reliant on it to
Yeah.
be in our benefit by any means. But with the actual data, of minimum thresholds being, let's just say the 3 to 4 foot range, if those were used in those zones versus, the agreed upon for coordination purposes, my question really at this point is like, why do we really need to coordinate at this point? I mean, with the way things are going.
It's not based on coordination, it's really based on the fact that Sigma says you can't impact critical infrastructure, and DEID is saying that their pipeline is critical infrastructure, so therefore, those previous values don't work for them, that they would cause, additional harm. And so, this is what's being proposed at this time.
Is there a study, because I haven't had a chance to look at their study though, Mayor, have they actually shown actual harm to their pipeline system?
They've shown subsidence on their,
But it impacted their pipeline system
and the conclusion of
versus age. It's an
Hold
older
on,
system.
hold on. Hold on. The study does say that it exceeds the safety requirements for that pipeline.
Exceeds it, but they actually had a pipeline failure anywhere.
The study does not say that. It does
So,
not
I mean,
say
there's
that.
one thing to say like it could hurt it, it's another thing
Yeah,
to
but
say
see,
that
that's why we're
actually
doing
hurt
the
it.
subsidence study, that if you.
I know. I'm gonna echo what Brandon just said, we'll pile on here, Brandon, we're on the same side of what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
You're not letting me get to the subsidence study slide, so.
We know what you're gonna say.
Well, yes.
It's
And
like,
we We don't know the
We
outcome.
got two landowners right here that are right on the road, and literally, I'm sitting here with, we actually
These
have.
are not the final numbers.
I know, but it's funny, because we have here, and then right across, literally right across the road, we got a bunch of wells right there too. Steve, I understand.
That's what we're concerned with.
That we run.
That's why we have
So
asked
we
for
turn off on
actual
this side,
information.
on the west side, and then nothing's ever turned off on the east side. The east side's gonna continue to sink, and they're gonna say,
Yeah, well, and Tad, Mayor and Dan, this is a Tri-County Advisory Committee meeting, right?
Right.
So I'm
Yeah.
just giving you a Tri-County growers input.
but Brandon.
That's exactly what we want.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's all.
This is a table where you
Let a
can
mayor
say,
talk now.
Yeah, I know.
table where you can say what you're thinking.
Yeah.
But we have like 4 slides coming up that talk specifically about what the study's gonna do and addresses some of these concerns that you guys,
Okay,
what we've
good.
done. All right, what we've done to negotiate the
I know,
study.
I know. Well, I did say if you wanna wait for another slide, just tell me.
Yeah, you did, but, all right.
I'll wait.
All right.
We'll stop piling on right now.
Okay. I forgot what I was talking about, yeah.
We got too flustered, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah. So, keep in mind, I'd like to, this is the general statements, this is where we're at right now. And that's how, this study, or this plan is written in a way that allows us to, if those numbers change, then, you know, we don't have to change the plan. All right. Okay, so here's some of the highlights from the plan. Okay. We are going to measure subsidence quarterly, which is something we already do. We're gonna focus on areas where historical rates suggest the greatest risk, so meaning areas that historically have had the highest amount of subsidence. We're gonna focus on collecting data so that we can make sure that when we have actions that this plan implements, that we have the data to support that. We have the ability to amend the plan over time, and then we've already talked about the subsidence management areas, the grid.
Those grids are 2 by 2, aren't they?
They're 4x4.
Four miles.
2 by 4?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's 16 sections.
Yeah, I guess you multiply that.
Well, no,
No, it's 4 sections.
It's 4 sections, so it's
Yeah.
2
Yeah.
miles by 2 miles. then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
2 miles.
2 by 2.
4
Yeah.
sections, yeah. I'm like, I had to think about that.
Yeah, on my map, I was trying to.
Yeah,
When you said 16, I'm like, that's not right. What
that's
happened?
not right, yeah.
No, I'm sorry, I'm just reading it.
Oh, okay.
So I make sure I got it.
Yeah. Okay, so, keeping all of those things in mind is what we, you know, those are some of the issues that we put into the plan. So next slide, please. All right, so first thing we had to do was define, what do we mean by a high-risk area? If we're gonna talk about high-risk areas, then what is the actual definition of a high-risk area? And the way we currently defined it is that if we hit a third of the minimum threshold, we will start to notify landowners in the area, we'll start to prepare an early management plan, which essentially will be, hey, are flow meters in place, are the wells registered, are the flow meters calibrated, and what actions can the GSA take? So one of the key things I should have mentioned, you know, we're talking about subsidence. Subsidence is a one-way street, right? Once we lose that foot, there's subsidence, it's gone, it's not coming back. This isn't like water levels or water quality where things might improve and we can get an area out of a problem by taking some actions. So we want to make sure that before things get too bad, we have taken some serious actions from the GSA. Now, that may mean, hey, is the GSA going to mitigate some things? So let's say that the action is, here's a real life example. Let's say it's a levee. Okay, so we have one levee that's having an issue and an impact. We just mitigate that levee and continue to move forward. So are there issues like that we can actually mitigate, allow, continued pumping, or do we have to start to implement, pumping restrictions? So way before we get to that, we want to see what can the GSA do, can land repurposing help, and we start to identify what is causing this and start to implement some type of actions way before we start talking about pumping restrictions, right? Yeah.
Oh, good question. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Stacey Ann.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question. You say that the high-risk areas are those which exceed a third of the MT, but the document says 25%. It's not super material, but just asking for some clarification.
It does that, it does say 25% and it's highlighted too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that too, Stacey Ann. Thank you for pointing that out. I did see that.
That was one of my two questions.
This is why you do a draft.
We were speaking up too much, so we didn't want to interrupt them again. That's good.
So we'll up the 25% to a third, because we do
Thank you.
want to give, yeah. But all of these, remember, this is a working draft, so all of this stuff is what you guys want it to be. You know, you can, if you wanted the early management plan to occur sooner, we can do it at 25%. If you want it to happen a little later, we can wait a little bit.
Well, I guess that was gonna be my next question is, based off of the third or 30%, have you already seen where those high-risk areas are and how many there are?
We did, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but that's also based on the current numbers.
Right.
And I didn't want to spend a lot of time worrying about the current if we're gonna do the subsidence study too.
Yeah. I mean, look, you gotta set a number somewhere, so, I mean,
Right.
I think at, 25, 30%, and then you have your 50, 75, and
Right.
100,
Right.
measurable objectives.
Right.
It's probably better to catch it earlier on, in my opinion.
Keep it at 25?
I mean, 25, 30, I mean.
Yeah, does it matter that much?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
fractions of a foot, right?
Yeah, but I think more considering, what does that mean for the GSA? If, let's say it is 30%, how many zones are already impacted? Or gonna be considered high risk?
Yeah, quite a
And what does that mean, though? How much more needs to be done right off the get-go?
Yeah, we'd have to start, I mean, the meters, everything, we'd have to start implementing right away.
Right.
And then, we gotta start looking at what can we do? What can the GSA do as well?
That's kind of where I was going, right? So, I mean, 25, 30% makes sense, but if you look through it through the lens of how much is gonna need to be done right off the get-go,
You've gotta do.
does 40% or something like that start to make a little bit more sense?
It does, from the sense that, you've got a lot to do, but 40% puts you pretty darn close to the.
I think you have to start a little earlier, because really this is the notification process.
Yeah,
Because
so that's fine.
because of the process for the GSA, right? Notification, making sure that we're registered and our meters are up to date, and so it's kind of like,
You know what
you have
else
to have a
helps
little
out?
bit of time before you go into, oh boy, here's your restrictions.
Higher minimum threshold numbers would help.
I would,
They would help.
I am advocating for that. Again, I don't know how much they're gonna change, and in the subsidence zone, I don't know what will happen, but I would love higher.
I really don't have to say much, I'm just saying nod, yeah.
So, one of the things we're also thinking is, when you're going for grants, if you can say that you're implementing some early management plans and things like that, it also looks good for the grant applications and things like that. So there's, without causing a lot of new, actions from the growers, can we implement the early management plans without, with you guys just doing what was already required, the metering, the registration, those types of things? Without, causing you a bunch more, paperwork. But on the other hand, it does mean that, the GSA and Deanna and Stacy have a lot more work to do too, because then we gotta figure out, hey, can we start to really come up with some other actions that are gonna help? Okay, so we do have some dates in here about, and we do have a hearing process. It talks about that, very similar to what Pixley has done in terms of the high-risk area as well. We also want to make sure that people have a chance to appeal, say, hey, we don't, this isn't correct, whatever, right? That there's a process for that. And then the enforcement of those actions, and that would be through existing GSA policies. Okay, so that's if we're in a high-risk area. We're starting to see see subsidence in some areas, we're gonna start to address those. We can specifically, identify those areas. Then the second part of that is the areas where additional subsidence, no, go ahead, next slide, Stacy, sorry. Okay, sorry, I did this as a quick, example. This is a very quick example. This is just, again, we're only talking the high-risk area right now, right? Strictly a high risk. So I'm gonna pick on Johnny because he's sitting across the table from me here, but let's say that I'm landowner A, I haven't put in my meter yet, and, you know I have a well, but man, I can't find those well construction details, right? And I'm pumping along, I'm following the policy, but I just can't, I don't have all my records. Johnny over here is got his meter in place, he's got a well log, he knows exactly how deep his well is, and he's following the policy too. We both happen to be in the same grid, right, in the same management area. Now, we're gonna come in as the GSA, we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna implement our our high risk, early management plan. What happens to these two different landowners? Next slide. So, Johnny, in this case, because he's already got his meter, he's already got his well log, everything to the GSA. At that point, he's just reporting data to us, right? How much he's going to confirm how much he's pumping. He's already doing what he's doing. Landowner A, for me, hey, I've got to go get my meter. I've got to go get my well construction details, and then I got to start reporting data. So if I'm in the high risk area and I don't have this information, then there are some costs and some actions for those folks. But if you've already got all that information, then it's, at that point, the GSA already has it. We're going to start looking at the people who don't and try to figure out what's going on and get all that information. So very little cost to Johnny, probably more cost to landowner A, right? Simple, but I just want to make sure everybody understands that, hey, if you're already doing the things that the policies are in place, there's probably very little immediate impact and cost to you.
Did we want to talk, there's a couple bugs in the
Sure.
system.
Sure.
That,
Great,
Yeah, this is the right time, yeah.
yeah, well, Stacy, or I think Nicole's on, you guys probably say it better than I can, but we started uploading certain things, and there's a handful of files that we've added that just aren't saving. I think Four Creeks is working on it, but more just want to make sure you are aware.
Oh, there's bugs in the,
Yeah.
okay,
Well
basin safe.
registration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, registration part of the
Right,
Yeah.
basin safe.
We have Four Creeks working on that?
We haven't done one, so what are the issues you guys?
Go back and.
I have a list. Let me pull it up. I don't know.
They're extensive and random seemingly.
What is?
Extensive in there.
The
bugs?
issues,
Oh, the
it's
bugs,
certain file types don't upload, but on a different well, they will upload. It's just a buggy system. It doesn't seem that there's
Yeah.
like one string wrong.
I've noticed that meter documents save and upload okay, but seemingly for the wells on our end, I'll upload things and then they won't show up later when I go back to look at them.
Just since I know there's a timeline associated with this and it's coming up, but still some kinks.
Yeah.
So we might need a little bit of a grace period to wrap that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're supposed to be doing a programming rollout today, so hopefully those bugs will get a little bit more.
Yeah. I know, just with holidays and stuff, I doubt.
Yeah, and whenever you face a bug, let us know, because we
Oh,
let them know right away.
We are.
And they're pretty
All right.
responsive, so.
They have it. Yeah, just letting you know.
No, I'm fine, yeah.
I'm sorry, Brent, I thought you meant that there was a bug in my, item. I was like.
He was taking it. Don't worry, I'll come up with that.
There's a bug in the write-up, so we. Yeah, I know.
The overall write-up.
I was like,
Big problem, I see.
They're not done with you, Mark, let me.
Yeah. Don't worry, we're not done yet. Yeah, we got, okay.
More, next one.
Yeah, next slide. Okay, so now, here's where the subsidence management orders come into place. So, what triggers a corrective subsidence management order? And right now, we have it written is, if you exceed a interim milestone for one of the management areas, one of the grids, then we will start preparing the corrective, subsidence management orders. And the issue will be, send out notices to the landowners and essentially prepare it based on how much of the MT we've exceeded. Obviously, at 50% first, we're gonna start reducing pumping. At 75%, we reduce pumping more, and at 100% of the MT, we are essentially saying we're going to cease pumping below the clay. Wait, hold on.
That's why I put my hand up.
Hold on a second,
I put-
Brandon. Yeah.
Well, the safety and that person.
Yeah. So now you guys are gonna ask me, I wrote it says 50% of the allocation. You're gonna say, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that I'm losing my transitional pumping? Or does it mean, and how does that mean to my sustainable yield pumping?
Well, what if you're a landowner with multiple parcels and you have one basin safe account?
Right.
Does it have anything to do with upper and lower aquifer? So there's a lot of questions here.
Yeah, so there's a lot of
Well,
questions.
Which allocation
How do
too?
you manage that?
Yeah, which allocation?
Because I know we talked, like, there's our current one, there's the one that's been talked about, the kind of rolling average, I think is more what it was, so which,
Yeah.
you know, which one
Yeah,
also,
which one?
yeah.
I think this is me thinking out loud, and I don't know how to manage this off the top of my head, but you almost have to do this by well location. I mean,
By well location.
Deanna, that kind of gets
Yes?
to my question. In the document, it's written as it's that the 50% reduction is based on the current use as recorded by the meter on that property, which is in some cases materially different than allocation.
yes, that's what I'm
Valid
thinking.
point, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What would you guys like it to be? How would you like to, what the reduction in pumping, because that's also ultimately what we're talking about, right? We have to reduce, so these are areas where impacts are occurring, right? It's not where, hey, I'm pumping, everything's fine. We still have subsidence occurring, and at that point, so there's two things. One is, we're not sure if the allocation is going to be by aquifer because, you know, we're still struggling through that issue, right? So we right now in the allocation, we're sitting there thinking, hey, maybe we should give you guys some flexibility. You pick the aquifer that you're gonna pump from, and we'll give, you know, well, you pump this much as a starting value from that aquifer, rather than saying you can only pump from one or the other.
Well, I'm curious what the struggling thing is when it comes to the aquifer, because, I mean, I'm pretty sure all the data out there shows that, you know, pumping out of the upper aquifer does not contribute to subsidence
It does not contribute as much.
as much.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
There is some contribution, but it's not nearly the same level, yeah.
yeah, I mean, the setting of the aquifers is one giant topic that, I mean, you want to talk about impacts to a grower where, I mean, the majority of that area, if I had to venture a guess, is all, at least they're definitely in both aquifers. I would say very few of them are strictly in the upper aquifer only.
That's one of the issues.
Okay.
That was gonna be my question too, because it says in the policy on 4.2, if it's determined that pumping from one or more wells, so you're looking at in that subsidence management, the four sections,
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
on 4.2 on these, your.
4.2, okay.
Corrective
Yeah.
subsidence. So the triggers, you have to go and determine in that 4 mile, that 4-section grid, which
Yeah.
of those wells, to Brandon's point, majority are either above and below, or below only.
Yeah.
And I don't know, how do we sort out, there might be a handful above only, but their production is so, quite minimal.
Well, and if you're, I think too, if you're gonna set and, or distinguish between the lower and the upper aquifer, is the reduction in strictly the lower Or is it,
This document right now does not
Right.
distinguish
We
between upper.
took that out for this reason,
right,
because we have, it's gonna be really difficult, most wells are perforated in both
Yeah,
or lower,
okay.
so,
yeah.
but I think that there's some room for that. If nothing else, a landowner making a case, I have a aquifer well, I mean, there's a lot of,
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll need some guidance though too, because, I mean, if subsidence is the major contributing factor, I think,
It's
didn't
going to
Pixley
be.
and Lower Tule, they're gonna distinguish between the upper and lower.
there is a trigger to distinguish between the upper and the lower.
Right, so, because, I mean, in theory, if you had an upper aquifer well and
Yeah.
some, for, you know, if you had a way to recharge the upper aquifer, you have more access to upper aquifer, which would be a good thing for a grower. But, you know, if this is just a general comment on, hey, 50% of the allocation, that's just pumping generally, you know, then my question reverts to, well, are we talking about the 7.5 acre foot, you know, bulk allocation over the next 5 years, or are we talking about the, right, yeah, or are we talking about the 1.6 acre foot per acre that's gonna be allocated in 2026? And is it 50% of that number?
Yeah, so that's what I was struggling with, was what is the reduction based on? What's the baseline number? It can't just be a reduction of an allocation, because we have impacts, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has to, if you were pumped, I'm just gonna make up a number. If you pumped, you know, as combined in that one area, we pumped, 10,000 acre feet last year. Clearly, that 10,000 acre feet is causing an impact, so we have to start to say, okay, there has to be a reduction from that value. And that's where, I don't wanna just base it on a reduction purely of a, transitional number, because those transitional numbers are causing problems. It has to start to reduce a substantial amount of pumping from a baseline year. That's where the struggle is, right?
Well, this is why the first of the policy has to be the investigation, 'cause we have to know what the wells are,
Right.
what they're doing, where they're perforated, and I actually had wrote in here the 50% reduction in the lower aquifer. You know, I think if you are one of those landowners that has an upper aquifer well, I think that there's gotta be some deference to that.
Yeah.
Subsidence management plan, maybe not in the water level plan, I don't know,
Yeah.
you know, for subsidence management,
So-
yes.
50% reduction of what number? The pumping value?
It has to
This
be
is
the
what Brand's
pumping
question-
value from the wells that within that grid. It cannot be an overall 50% in their credit system, because everybody can still move their credits around. So
Right.
that doesn't get us
Yeah, that's the
anywhere.
same, that's the problem with trying to base these reductions on the credit system, 'cause
Right.
you can trade them, you can move
Yeah.
them, you can say, I wanna use my sustainable yield here, but I wanna use my allocation here, you can,
Yeah, so what,
it'll get super messy.
But once you're in this management, then that has a trigger,
No
a
more
different
transfer
type of management.
credit.
we're going by, well, we're going by meter.
You could transfer credits out, not into that well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, all right.
yeah. You can transfer credits out. That's what we're currently thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, my thoughts at this point is what gives landowners the most flexibility.
Yeah, okay. That's a good, what gives you the most flexibility, right?
Yeah. Because we need freedom to choose what's gonna work for us on our properties.
Yes.
Also, you know, we can't forget that this is gonna be looked at on a zone basis.
Yes.
So if there's somebody who's like, hey, I just wanna pump 100% out of the lower because I get the gallons per minute that I want,
Yeah.
and somebody else decides to, hey, I'm gonna just pump out of the upper, I don't know if that person who's just pumping out of the upper should be,
Punished as well.
right,
Or limited, not
Yeah.
punished, but limited.
yeah, so, or even, yeah,
Or the enforcement action too, I mean, think about that, you might have landowners that screw you, or they're gonna keep pumping.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long it takes to actually enforce liens, and actually cause someone to stop pumping from below the aquifer.
Yeah.
You can count on people,
I can guarantee you, there's
You-
people
you
out
can
there
count on
that are
people
gonna
just
take these
continuing
letters
to
and
pump
throw them in the
until-
route file every time they send them to them, and they'll just keep pumping.
until somebody
Yeah.
comes and, you know, pulls their meter off
Yeah.
off the pole.
Not everybody's like, you know,
Right.
report someone, there's people don't report to anybody.
Yeah,
They're gonna do what they wanna do.
Yeah.
Period.
yeah.
It's
So,
gonna be a federal enforcement action too. It's
Yeah.
gonna be a problem.
100%.
but I think we need a little guidance too on, like, which allocation policy are we going with? 'Cause I know there's been discussions on changing that.
Right.
And I think, you know, again, if it's an annual allocation that rolls, that's one thing. And then going back to, you know, I don't know, I almost reluctant to say it, but I think you have to do a split between the upper and the lower at this point, if you wanna put this into place, because if it's, you know, generally allocated to just pumping, everybody has the freedom to pump out of the upper or lower. It's not gonna matter. So unless there's strict enforcement action on the people who are pumping strictly out of the lower, I don't know how it'll really help
Well,
it.
I mean, I think what Brent, you're getting at is there a way to preserve as much as possible the upper aquifer if someone wanted to go to the expense to either seal off a well
Yeah,
to try to see what that does. And so that goes back to this minimum threshold map too that we have, but if we can give a landowner some time to adopt, to revise his well investment and then maybe seal off the lower aquifer and see what that does for a few years, if it stabilizes subsidence. You know, we're gonna wanna have access to these, to keep pumping as much as possible, but doesn't impact subsidence. So I think what this is you're trying to obviously penalize and stop pumping that's causing subsidence. I think we don't really know for sure if it's 100%. You know, we're hoping it's 100% below aquifer. So, you know, I think if we could give growers some time to, you know, give them some room to, because it's not cheap if we're gonna have to do some well modification. If you don't wanna do a well modification, and then you realize that, hey, it doesn't really do anything.
Yes.
Or my neighbor at the same grid that continues to pump,
Yes.
and we're gonna continue to subside, and we're all thinking together, and even what I try to do
Yes.
causes the whole area to sink,
But,
you know.
Deanna mentioned the investigation and other things. We're actually asking that the investigation starts sooner, right? That's what the high risk 25% is, to get into the investigation mode even sooner so that we can start to identify some of the,
I thought it was just notification. It is investigation also?
yeah, it's an investigation by the GSA then to really start to say, hey, what's actually going on in some of these areas that we can address. So that, but once we've lost 50% of the MT, and both of you know that in some cases the MT numbers are very small. You know, we don't have a lot of time and room to do a lot of other things if we're gonna, if the last line on this thing is true. If you hit 100%, we've committed to cease pumping, then there's not a lot of time, so we have to act sooner, and which means, in some cases, to Brandon's earlier point, it would mean we'd be acting now in the investigation mode, right? Because we're already past that 25%.
We don't even have the most current subsidence numbers, do we?
We have, for the year that we're in right now, we have three out of the 4 readings.
What, like,
Are these numbers on this?
No, they're,
right, so it's gonna be worse. I mean, we might even be
Those are January.
75%.
yeah, they're January.
So, almost a year ago?
Yeah, almost a year ago, yeah.
So if we have a year's
Yeah.
worth of subsidence already under our belt, we might be in that 75. Anyway, but if you get to that 100% of minimum threshold cease pumping, and if it's just a general cease pumping, you're talking shut the well down, no more pumping whatsoever, or is it 100% cease pumping in the lower aquifer? That way, as a grower, I need to do my own cost analysis at that point to retrofit my well to strictly access upper aquifer water,
Yeah.
if it's there.
Right.
It might not even be there.
Okay, that's the question.
Yeah.
So the
So-
100%, is it 100% of everything other than sustainable yield?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so your question really is, in all of these, can you continue to pump the sustainable yield? When I'm talking about reductions, does it only for the overdraft value, the transitional value, and not the sustainable yield? That's essentially, that's your
Yeah.
question. Yeah. I was not, to be honest with you, I was looking at this and saying, we're going to reduce pumping, period, and not whether it's transitional or sustainable yield.
So just turn the well off, you're not allowed to pump anymore.
This is why we do a draft, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And then, like, I should have pointed out earlier that Deanna and I did not necessarily agree, Deanna doesn't agree with all of these, so she felt like this was, overly,
I think that there are some things we can build in that would give slightly more flexibility.
right.
The problem is, when we hit 100% of that number, I mean, how long is the state gonna let you go after that if you're not
Right.
turning the tide? Now, if you can prove you're turning the tide pretty significantly, maybe, I mean, this is all eventually to keep this out of the hands of the state,
Exactly.
but,
That's the other thing we haven't really
that's a
talked
whole
about.
other,
Right.
yeah,
But we've seen this work. The quilt map and
they like it.
they like it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's that aspect of it all. But I think we just needed to make sure it's designed to give landowners flexibility to make choices on how they want to continue farming, if possible.
Yeah, that's where things get the most difficult. How do you balance the flexibility with the impacts, right? Look, guys, in my mind, and Johnny knows this better than Steve, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, I would not have started from 2020, right? I think Tule did everybody a huge disservice by putting that in because it doesn't give you room. Brandon, you said, hey, if I add a little higher value, well, literally, if you had 2.5 more feet, you'd have a higher value if we just started in 2023, right? Because whatever subsidence has happened, and that's kind of the view that I've taken, and that's the argument we've made with the state. But Tule has said that they're starting at 2020, and that is one of the things that we have not been able to convince them to change.
We advocated for 2023, but they said absolutely not.
But we're also dealing with, the ask of Delano too, so I think that's what's really hurt us. I think what Brandon and I both see is that it's really inequitable along the full boundary. If we didn't have Delano's ask, I would think we'd have a little bit more better peanut butter spread of subsidence, because you're looking up on the north side, 7 to 8, over 7 feet of subsidence on the far west side, 6 to 7 feet of subsidence. And then we're asked over here to go down to like 2, and with over 70% of that already used up.
Yeah.
So you start to see why Brandon and I are both very antsy here.
Sure, I totally understand.
Because and we have I'm working with some guys too in Kauai, right on the south, right north of the Tule River, and that definitely has impacted. The subsidence over there has really caused some bad things to happen. So
it's pretty hard to fathom that we're major.
It's hard to, I guess it's hard to fathom what,
Land.
to me, it's I'm a public meeting, so I don't know. Anyway, the politics of the Tule are causing some really hard policy decisions.
Yeah.
And, again, I think that the minimum threshold, how they're set on the far eastern boundary, even if you look, I don't know how Eric and Pixley came up with their numbers on the northern side of Delano, because I'm in one of those too. But it's another 1.5 foot higher minimum threshold.
And they're closer to the Frank Kern.
No, I mean, right on the corner of 99 there, that one, 3.7, and then the one right north of, the very northern part of, Tri-County, that little, the acres there of 3 and 3.2, and then you go down south, I think that to us is like, hey, if we can be at least equitable for what Pixley is doing along here, and then that one section that's already in the Tri-County area is 3, we gotta have, we're gonna subside. There's no question. We need some time, we need a few more years to get our investment back, right? We're going back to numbers here. We got a huge investment. We need to continue a little bit better ROI on our return. And this right here looks like almost a zero return within a year or two. Like, that's the argument you're hearing from Brad and myself.
Sure.
Well, you would think too.
Like, if you just look at how Pixley did it, if we can come up with something that's along there, at least you have can pass the smell test, because they're looking at three quarters on the northern side of Delano.
So
Their
Pixley
pipeline, their
doesn't
pipeline
necessarily
is right there.
agree with those either, and the study goes,
I mean,
the study's
the
now 6
pipeline's right there.
miles by 6 miles.
Yeah, I
all
understand.
around William R.
I'm just saying, I mean, I get where we're going, Amir, with this. Obviously, we wanna get out of probation. I get that. It's just, we need a little bit more room on the eastern side of the Tri-County area. Give our landowners a little bit more of a ramp, because it's the inevitable is there in front of us. We know where we're going. It's not good. And then we want ability to, if we want to try to retrofit a well or two, which is not cheap, you know, we need a little time to see if a retrofit, and if we pump from the top, does it slow it down? We need a little more time too before we're like, oh, no, it didn't do anything. You're there, so.
If you're asking for time,
The data, I think, once you get the data, then you'll have, you know where all the wells are perked at, or
2024.
We don't even know. I mean, we'll have to see them.
The light green is
I mean,
0.2
We don't have. A
to
couple items we
0.4,
don't have.
and the orange is 0.6 to 0.8,
What's that?
the 2024 subsides.
What we're talking about. Yeah, the darker green.
Wow, so Pixley, the Pixley zone is the high, right there, is it right there?
Can I zoom on this?
Yeah, you can.
So it's north of Allensworth, it looks like.
Pixley,
Yes,
HVAC.
Pixley. It's the wells right on 43.
It's between Angela and North.
That's your problem.
It's all my problems, Steve.
Why don't you tell Angela that,
It's our subsides, okay.
They don't
Yeah,
have
that's-
AMPs
yeah.
either.
is your public agency within your boundary gonna abide by this?
Exactly.
If they're told, will they abide by this?
All Tri-County can do is come up with a management action plan.
And then what they tell you, no.
Well, the board hasn't approved this yet.
yeah, this is strictly a draft.
And if they say no,
It's a draft.
then it'll be, certain state intervention for Tri-County Water Authority. And there will be no way around that.
Well, and I think, I mean, that's the only other option, really.
Yeah, that's the other option is to go, and it's not,
Yeah.
it's gotta be a thought for landowners, right? I don't think that that's going to be helpful in the long run, but.
No,
Well, but this is
And-
gonna put us
and
there if we don't put more
If
specifics
Pixley,
on it.
Lower Tulare, Delano Earlyworth, Kern Tulare, if they're all out, right, they've all been deemed by the, which is likely, they're gonna focus on Tri-County and Eastern Tulare.
Yeah.
Well, Eastern Tulare's a bigger animal, so Tri-County becomes the easiest one to focus on right out of the gate.
Yeah.
In my opinion, which is
Again, no, I think,
not a great thought.
Yeah.
and I get it, the sad thing is, I mean, just looking at that live InStar map,
Yeah,
this is not the problem area,
right.
but we're gonna pay for it first.
The problem is if the
It's right here,
law
right, right.
states
This
that
is
you
right here,
cannot
yeah.
impact
Right here.
critical infrastructure, and your neighbor
No,
has
yeah.
asserted that they have critical infrastructure that everybody around them is impacting. I assert they're impacting their own critical infrastructure, and thus the study.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Which is the next slide.
and I'm hoping that will alleviate some of this.
I think, Deanna, I know we're not gonna be able to win that argument with DEID on that, so I think what we're really bringing our thing, if we can get a little bit higher MT to give ourselves a little more of a ramp,
Mm-hmm.
within reason, and then hopefully we can get some other federal or state dollars to help some land retirement. I mean, we're not asking to keep pumping for Kingdom Come. So your funding will start to really dry up in a few, I can tell you.
Fine. I mean,
You're not gonna get as many well fees here
I
pretty soon.
shouldn't say I'd be happy, because I know what that means.
Well, what that means is
that
you're
means
gonna have a lot more
everybody-
ground that's gonna be,
Yeah.
have to be permanently fallowed,
Yes.
No,
you know?
I would only reiterate those comments. I mean, that was my initial comment too, to start, is just, if we can use the actual numbers from Harder study that have a 3 to 4 foot minimum threshold, that at least buys us some time. We need to build some flexibility into this corrective subsidence management order, I mean, yeah, but again, we all know the elephant in the room is there's gonna have to be fallowing done, we just need time. see all of this, is
Yeah.
like, this is gonna happen this year. That's,
Because everything on here is 50 or 50 to 70% of MTs on the border right here in Tri-County. Right here is already at the 50 plus, some of it's 70.
I don't think we would implement any of the management actions before the study is complete.
No, I understand that. We understand that, but I think we're looking for, we got till 2040. I know the state wants this magical zero subsidence number, which I think is gonna be very hard to accomplish throughout the whole Tulare Lake area.
cause I'm assuming we're trying to get this out to get out of probation,
Yes.
Yeah.
right? So that's the other thing, is
I'm
like,
in crunch time to
we have-
get these management,
yeah, we have a
Plan.
September.
and we're not there yet, don't get me wrong, but I've
Yeah.
gotta try to get, and I need it for Tulare Lake as well.
Yeah,
So I'm trying to push to get something
so we
out
have
there.
10 months until the state could
Nothing
come
would
in
get implemented until January of 2026. Nothing's gonna get
With your-
implemented in 2025.
with your policy,
Yes,
or,
with the policy.
right,
And then in January of unless we said, hey, we want at least the, investigation part, or that to start
Mhm.
earlier, we could do that. And
So-
by 2026, we'll know what those MTs are gonna be.
right.
Because
So
we'll have the
hopefully,
study.
hopefully we get a policy that gets us out of probation, but we're still looking at January 2026, so a year from now.
Yes,
Or, worst case scenario, the state comes in September of next year, puts in their own interim,
yes,
which is
Right.
10 months from now.
yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Lower Tuling, Pixie, well on the road, I mean, they're positioning themselves in
They
the
have-
springtime to go back to the state and ask for a hearing.
The state had, in February, I think it was supposed to be, but the state
So,
very much said
it's gonna
that,
be just really
they-
Tri-County and Alpha doing. Are they doing anything? I mean, we're impacted by them too.
where they wanted zero subsidence numbers as well. They
All
squashed
right,
this from the
so
other side.
so putting that aside, it would
Just
be
put
really
that aside.
Tri-County and Eastern Tule that we'll have to really make sure, and hopefully Alpha gets their stuff
Yeah,
together.
it really, Tri-County has to have a management plan if we have any hope of not going straight into
That's right.
some sort of interim plan with the state.
So, I mean, are you envisioning though, Deanna and Amir, if we get all this stuff in place, ourselves going back for, is it, how do we go back for ourselves, for Tri-County, or do we go as a basin? How's this gonna work?
I think everybody,
Because
I think
Lucky-
it's very individual now. With
Yeah,
what,
I'm
with what
saying.
they did with Delano Early Martin, how
Do we
they
have to
treated
go
this
back?
in Lower Tule,
Yeah.
as soon as we have it, we will ask to go back before them and present it.
So is it really this, is there anything else really major, where it has?
The allocation.
The allocation
It's in the
program, those
allocation.
are two, those two pieces,
Those are
Yes.
two major pieces, yeah.
that we could go back at some point next year
And-
and ask.
And the board has to approve it.
So, you wanna have the subsidence study done with DEID before this is rolled out?
I think we can approve, cause again, this would not change, only thing would change is the
Minimum
MTs.
threshold numbers.
So I think we can get all this done and approve it, and
But if
still work
that's
on that
baked in with, okay, so we would,
A little leery of it.
Well, we could-
Really, what's this,
Well,
these
it
MTs
could,
in
it
here?
could be with the caveat that those MTs are not.
We
we're
at the
going
very
to.
minimal would have to, that would give us some, ability to know that we're not gonna get.
Because otherwise, this study's not gonna be done until August,
Yeah,
and we're back before the state in September. So I don't think we can wait for the study, and that's if I can get all the wells registered here in the next month or month and a half or so. And I haven't had a lot of participation yet from everybody else on that border.
Hmm.
So I have a lot of work to do to get them, and some of them I don't think are going to be readily excited about it. And now that we've extended to 6 miles, it's even more. So
yeah,
there's a lot to do.
yeah.
And you know, and if there is a better way to manage this thing for subsidence, I just don't know what it is.
No, it's not a better way, I think, like, I mean, being reluctant to say it, but we've seen this work. I think the idea around it makes sense, but we just, you know, I think there's some equity issues potentially in this deal that aren't good for certain people that are in this room.
Yeah, no, I agree.
That's the hard pill to swallow. So, I think, you know, representing the landowners in that area, we just need some flexibility, we need some time, because, I mean, yeah, we don't even, at this rate, we won't have a chance to farm the property out even. It's just,
I don't think any of us were thinking we were gonna get hit, but I think we're looking at the allocations, trying to run numbers and figure out where that was gonna peter out. But I think the subsidence management that we've gone into now is a game changer to the point where it's causing a lot of concern.
Yeah, but the problem was, we kept talking allocation, and that was strictly about how much you can pump. Nobody was talking impacts, and that's what we kept saying to DEID, that it's not about how much you're pumping, it's about what impacts are occurring. And if those impacts aren't occurring, then we can pump more, right? But if the impacts continue, that's the limiting factor. In the interest of time, Brandon, let me jump ahead to a couple more slides, because I wanna cover.
just last comment,
Sure.
I think my thought on before this thing's rolled out though too is, again, which allocation policy are we going
Right.
with? Because if
Of course.
it's 7.5 and I have 50% of that, that means I still have 3.75 I can pump from whatever aquifer. Versus,
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad option versus the 1.6 and then I only have 0.8,
Right.
you know?
Oh, it won't, the 7.5, the original allocation?
Right.
It will not be that, because that doesn't meet.
But
the new-
what is it? We don't,
Yeah,
we're not, I don't have a solid number to run off.
it's gonna be closer to the,
Is it what you ran?
yes, and we need to get that out
A
again.
few months ago?
We need to get
Right.
that out again.
And that was more my,
Yeah.
Right.
okay.
This is
I'll
kind
stop
of
talking.
what I was
No,
thinking
no.
we're going towards.
I got
Is that-
me at 11:30 again.
I know, I've tried, Stacy, go ahead, let's move ahead. So let's talk about the subsidence study. So the way what's currently being proposed for the subsidence study is actually gonna encompass 6 miles from the DEID border now, including into DEID. Okay?
What was the reason on the expansion?
DEID is actually the one that wanted the expansion. They felt that there are wells that are farther away than the original 3 miles that were potentially causing some of the impacts.
Oh, the DEID asked for that.
Yeah, DEID asked for that. Our concern, of course, is that, as you're gonna see on the next slide, we want to put in real data, meaning real wells, real, well locations, real well construction, and going 6 miles makes that twice as much work, actually more than twice as much work, right? Yeah, exponentially more work. So, but that's what the sub-basin is currently, that meeting is gonna occur tomorrow. Tom's gonna present this. I'm giving you guys a little bit of a heads up. There is, the way the study is written, and this was, something that Tri-County insisted on, was that it's going to estimate the contribution from outside and within DEID as to how much of that subsidence is impacting that pipeline. Okay? DEID does not get a pass, but they are gonna utilize the groundwater model. So if you wanna move to the next.
Why the cutout though? That northwest corner, why the cutout?
I don't know why.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna clarify that with Tom tomorrow.
Yeah, we have a discussion about this tomorrow. I don't
Yeah.
know why this little jag
Yeah.
stuff. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I would think a 6 mile it would be a square, but.
It'd be a square, right? So we're gonna clarify that with Tom tomorrow
All right.
when we see him.
Yeah.
He's had some, other family issues that he's been dealing with, so we've been kind of leaving him alone. Okay, so the picture that you see, the figure that you see on the right there, that's the way the model currently handles pumping. It doesn't know where the wells are for the most part, other than in that that northeastern portion. So it assumes this grid, and it basically says that this grid pumps this much water.
For Tri-County, that's a big problem, because a lot of that area is fallow.
Yeah.
So it just has this grid,
So-
and it has wells out there, and
Yeah.
it assumes so much is pumping, but much of that area is fallow in Tri-County,
Yeah,
so
so
that's,
Thousands of acres
Yes.
of ecological reserve.
that's
ground.
right.
Yeah, so just to be clear, it doesn't say that more pumping is occurring. It just says that the pumping is equally distributed, right?
Yeah.
So if we're pumping 60,000 gallons, or 60,000 acre feet, excuse me, still at 60,000 acre feet,
Yeah.
it just makes that 60,000 equally distributed.
Can you equally distribute it across farmed acreage?
But, yes, And that's what we're trying to get to,
Yeah.
is you see the way that northeast is, where they've actually got real wells in that corner? We don't wanna use this grid pattern, we wanna actually identify where the wells actually exist, what zone they're pumping from, and revise the model in this 6-mile grid area, in the 6-mile area, and have that model rerun that. Or, you know, obviously, we're not gonna try and affect the entire model, but at least in this area that we're talking about, we're gonna use actual data.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, Deanna, there's so much fallow ground up, and, I mean, especially in the areas of concern, that has to be accounted for in the study.
Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah. So that's what we're insisting with Tom, is that don't, you know, he called these surrogate wells, this distribution of this equal distribution of all the wells, and we basically said, no, let's get real, and his point to us is, get me the data, right? Which gets back to Deanna's point about why we need the wells registered, we need to identify exactly, and we need DEID and Pixley to do the same. So once we've got that, and right now Tom wants to have that done by the end of January, that's his current schedule. We're like, Tom, that's probably not likely, let's give us another month to do that. Once we have that data in there, they're going to revise the model, and they're gonna run a series of different scenarios, turning off and on different wells and seeing what kind of impact that's gonna have in terms of subsidence. We've also asked DEID to provide additional data that's in their subsidence study, because the pipeline system shows 3 areas where they show exceedances to the factor of safety on that pipeline, but we don't know exactly where those are. They don't actually say it's right here. Looking at it, and it's not to scale, but looking at it, some of it appears to occur way to the east. And we're like, that should not be on us, right?
Right.
So that tells me that there are other things happening within DEID. And our point has always been that we all understand that DEID contributes the least amount to the impact than any other GSA. But in the dry years, they don't have sustainability. And they are pumping as much, if not more, than what we're pumping.
They pump more in the dry years than Tri-County pumps,
And
altogether, all Tri-County.
that includes Angola and everybody
Yeah.
else. So,
And the clay is pretty much right along Highway 99 there, right? Sea clay, it's right
Yes.
in that boundary.
yes, it is,
But a
but
good portion of Delano doesn't really have a confined
yes,
aquifer.
but they do have clays out there.
Right.
And,
Obviously, there's issues going on the eastern Tule.
yeah,
Yeah,
and-
Are
we've always said there's a
geologically
clay thing,
somehow,
but if you look at it, you have subsidence where there's
so you can only
non-confinement, so you
extrapolate
can't
that
just say
same
that's it.
geology going down into Delano without the sea clay, that there might still be issues.
there's still issues, and they've got half of their wells are constructed in what is the same depth as our deep aquifers. So if you've got all bringing in all this import and you do all this recharge, why do you need a bunch of deep wells, right? That means you clearly need those deep wells, and they're pumping from those deep wells. And they're not equally distributed. They are very heavily in some areas than others, the deep wells, as far as the information they've provided to date. Yeah. Brad, thank you.
Brandon.
Hey, give
We'll keep working on that.
give Deanna your comments on this.
Yeah.
I've tried to verbally express them all.
Yeah, any other written comments?
Yeah.
There's gonna be some changes to this
All right.
document.
Yeah, this is very much an initial draft.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
See, Brandon.
Yeah, next slide. Okay. The outcome of the subsidence study. The outcome is where we're actually gonna start to establish the new minimum thresholds, okay? For both the land subsidence and the, water levels in the lower aquifer. And that includes, within Tri-County, Pixley, and I should have added DID on there too. And the schedule right now is to have this study complete by August of 2025 before the, before the November hearing. But that's the current schedule. If we ask Tom for an additional, 1 month you know, obviously that puts us into September then. So, that was a lot. Yeah, real quickly, I'm gonna hit a couple of quick updates. These are very quick updates. Troy County did submit a application for a Water Smart grant. We are requesting $500,000 from the grant. There's approximately about 100 ag wells that we think need to be metered up. Some of them, and we've asked for a couple different meters, but they're micrometers. They have both the inline as well as the flanged. We would be able to buy both. We've essentially said, and we're going to ask for $500,000, and we're going to need matching with another $500,000 for the meter program. We won't hear back on that until probably late next year, or 2025, I should say. And there is another. This isn't 100% worked out by the Bureau yet, but they are expecting that another Water Smart grant round will occur in late summer, very late summer. And if we're not awarded, then we will, of course, submit for the next round. And if we are awarded, we will submit in the next round for other projects. Okay, and then, a quick update on the Allensworth project. On the incidental take permit, again, if you guys remember very quickly that we did not find any species on our property. We had the study done, but there was potential habitat, even though we didn't see any actual species. And so there is possibility that the species may be moving across our property to go to habitat on either side. And so we, rather than take a risk of, having an issue with the species during constructions, we have applied for an incidental take permit with California Department of Fish and Wildlife. I didn't say Fish and Game for a change. They've reviewed the application. They've asked for some additional information. We have met with them, and we think we've worked out exactly what needs to be provided in order to complete the ITP. Kathy, who's on the call, or was, I'm not sure if she's still on the call, but she's been a huge help and a big part of this. And then the other issue that we're still working out with Fish and Wildlife is how much we're going to have to set aside for potential mitigation. And so the nice thing about the mitigation is it still allows Angela to continue to use that property for grazing. So,
how many acres is actual going to be, what's the size of the pond you're going to actually build?
it's only going to be 20 acres.
20, okay, that whole, is that an 8? No.
That little green on the,
Well, I mean, the yellow is how many acres is that?
the yellow is 160 acres.
168, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be phase 2, and then, but what we're gonna focus on is just using up this money, and we did, the Tule Sub-Basin was able to get an extension, until the end of 2025 to use their funds.
Thank goodness.
Got it.
Yeah, so, there's a couple issues on the design. Those are kind of laid out, but, we're doing some additional geotech lab testing. We've got to finish designing the hydraulic structure in the canal. We've got to put in the pneumatic gate, or the design for the pneumatic gate, and then the electrical to go along with that. And then we're incorporating some habitat design into the basin itself, meaning an island, and we're working with Audubon on that. So those are the issues on the Allensworth project. I think that should be the last slide. Yes. Ooh, barely. Only kept you guys 2 minutes longer. Okay, we covered a lot of ground. I really appreciate the fact that a lot of you hung out with us for the entire duration. So please get your comments back to Deanna on the working draft of this subsidence management plan. For the next few meetings, we're going to continue to work on the subsidence management plan and the groundwater allocations. And speaking of that, our next the Tri-County Board meeting, on January 9th at 1 p.m. And we have our next advisory board, committee meeting on January 22nd at 10. And Stacy, of course, will send out notices to everybody, but please, if you can get your comments on the management plan, sooner than that, we would love to get those and incorporate those into it.
Meeting time-wise, have we always done it on Wednesday?
No,
Tuesday, I mean,
Not Tuesdays, usually it's the fourth Wednesday.
it's the fourth Wednesday at 10. We had to change that because it was conflicting with
Tuesdays,
two of the meetings, but
is not a good,
we're back to Wednesday bad for you.
Wednesdays are bad for me, but I thought, this is great.
It's always been the fourth Wednesday.
Fourth Wednesday.
Yeah.
Fourth Wednesday.
We only adjusted for holidays or
Yeah, holidays, yeah.
meetings going on elsewhere.
9 o'clock would be better.
We could totally consider moving it to 9. I don't,
I have an afternoon meeting on that same day, but,
So I actually have to run right now to back to Hanford.
yeah, what time is that one today? Is it
That
right?
one.
1 o'clock.
All right, in that case,
It's all, you could zoom in on that one, right?
You can.
Yeah. That's a good option.
conflicting meetings.
I know. Thank you, everyone. Want to wish everybody a happy holiday. Appreciated everybody's efforts across this whole year. And, we look forward to working with all of you, going into the next year. And we've got some real deadlines and got some important issues to discuss. So we appreciate everybody's input and involvement.
Yep, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Merry Christmas, everyone.